You may find it difficult to believe, but this trail was nearly impassable in October. And it's laid down so much since then. When I came in here to shoot that buck, I had to basically move with the wind. Every time the wind would stop blowing, I'd have to stand still because it would make too much noise going through all the brush and the briars and everything like that. Now I can stroll right through here quiet as can be. You gotta account for that when you're scouting this time of year, that it's gonna be very, very different after summer, especially when you have a really wet spring and summer. The vegetation just really grows, which is exactly what we had last year. All right, sometimes you're good, sometimes you're just lucky. I was working my way back, and there's this area right near a road. You can see the houses back there. That's on the other side of a street. But it's really thick, it's old clear cut, and I've always just been curious about it. Well, I found a rub that I had seen for several years, and right by a gate, right by the road, I thought it had to be nighttime sign. But out of just pure curiosity, I wanted to see if there were any trails coming back to it. Well, I started looking and I found trails, but it looked like all doe and fawn prints. But I figured it was worth it. Well, led me to something cool. So, what we have right here is a buck bed. You can see it's all matted down. There's all manner of scat and feces throughout it. It's got a little bit of front cover to it here, and then you can see out for some distance. If he was laying down though, which I'm gonna do on this little dry hump here, if that buck was laying down, you can see it's not really a sight oriented bed. He's not really looking out over that very kind of distance, so I would assume he's gonna bed here with the wind blowing from that to us. And then directly behind here you have some pretty thick cover to create sort of a back wall, and he's got a trail going here, he's got a trail going over there behind my pack, so he's got a good escape route. Little tiny rub right there. But what gets interesting is when you start following this out, you can see some historical rubs, and then where things just got shredded, and shredded rather recently. And what I mean by that is these weren't made in early September. Maybe they were, but they've been freshened up sometime in November, December. It's February. Obviously they're gonna be a little dry. I can't tell you exactly where, but as you continue on in the distance a bit, you may not be able to see them. Those trees back there that are out of focus are all rubbed out the same way. And then right there is the road. Hey, this is not more than 30 yards off the road. And if you were to keep going this way, you would find all sorts of rubbed out stuff. So this buck is definitely huntable. I mean, there's not a lot of tree options, but realistically, there's that little guy right there. And this would put me in a perfect shooting opportunity on him. If I know somehow he's in this bed, which I don't know exactly when he'll be in here year-wise, time of year-wise, I could easily hike up that road, hop the drainage ditch, shimmy right up that tree without making a noise with that south wind, which is what I would expect him to be bedding here in. I don't think he would bed with a north wind, so in other words, it blowing over this way. I don't think he would do that. I think he would bed on the other side of the thicket, as in over there. It seems like they don't just move in a bedding spot around here as much as they'll move dramatically, like hundreds of yards based on wind. So this is very much a huntable buck bed. So if we get a buck in it, with which I would like to hunt, there is a very good chance that I will be slipping into here at some point next fall. I'm not a super big trail cam guy. I like them for inventory, and I happen to know that there were 2 or 3 bucks in this area that I would like to kill. It doesn't mean that I will kill one here. However, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna mark this spot. I'm probably gonna come back here one more time just to sort of test out entry, exit. I'll probably bring milkweed and come back one that time and drop milkweed just to make sure the wind doesn't do anything funky here. I'm seeing more rubs that way. So I'm gonna search the whole area for more beds just to see if he's bouncing around or if he's only bedding right here on this little spot. And this is what you're looking for. This is what we're out here trying to find, is stuff like this. So, good find. So, here we have another buck rub. And this trail is starting to get concentrated. Don't worry about the gunshots. I'm near a shooting range. But when you start to get concentrated sign, and you'll have like the little rubs, like this guy right here, peppered around, and then you'll have the stuff that's really, really well worked. And I could be wrong about this, but my theory on it is you have multiple bucks in the same area and they're in competition. And I think they lay down more sign and they're more aggressive with their sign when they're in competition. So if I was a betting man, I would say that when the wind's right, you have all sorts of deer bedding in here. And you know, they're separated enough visually because, as you can see, I can't really see that far. So they have enough seclusion and separation from each other. But again, I'm right by the road. Like, this would be an overlooked spot, and over there I'm seeing more rubs. But I can't be more than 50 yards from the road right now. So look for these overlooked spots. I mean, this is daytime activity. This is like prime stuff. Like, they're gonna be in here during daytime, moving around before they go out to feed. This is an old overgrown farm pond that it actually shows up on the map. And this is the back edge of it. And then there's some, you can't really see it, but there's some evergreen type pines over there. In Ohio, those are really rare. So those are always a magnet for deer. I'm gonna have to check that out. And then if you follow the hump, you can see the trail kind of goes back down. And actually you can't see it, but I can. On the other side, there's another shredded tree. So, and then in this line of diversity, if they do bed here, there's all sorts of places to set up and hang a stand. So, lots of promising spots. And a lot of times when you do this, you come in blind and just figure it out as you go. But it's good to have 2 dozen ideas of, well, I can be in this tree or that tree or this tree or that tree over there. Maybe I'll be in this tree. To at least have some confidence going in that you'll find a spot to set up. I'm gonna go try and find those evergreens. So I bailed on the evergreen idea just because it is a thick mess all the way around it. But here's that rub I was talking about. I could see from the hump. You can see trails there, and you know, trail behind me. It's all kind of starting to look like a common pattern here. The whole distance of the road, there's this diversity line here, and it just seems to keep working down. So I'm gonna keep working down myself and see if I find anything different from what I've been seeing. Rubs and scrapes and beds, then I'll point it out. And when I come back in, I'm gonna actually go into this stuff with way more detail. I'm just trying to, this is kind of like a speed scout deal. I wanted to cover ground, and so that's what I'm doing. Okay. So, what I'm walking in right now is sawdust, actually. And if you saw my video from my first buck kill out of a saddle, my Ohio buck this year, you will see a massive sawdust pile. Now, this is not a pile, okay? When I went in to hunt that area, I went to that area because all the old logging roads converged there. There was a sawmill there that milled all the lumber, and that was all the sawdust left behind. This stuff can sit there for decades and look exactly like it does. It doesn't decay, nothing really grows in it. This is obviously not the same scale. There's no big hump, but it's still littered with deer tracks. I cannot begin to tell you why the deer seem to be attracted to these areas. My thought would be because of the convergence of trails, then they were obviously playing in the stuff in that video for 20 some minutes. It was insane. And walking around, I'm seeing dozens and dozens and dozens of deer tracks here, so it leads me to the same conclusion. If you find these areas in the woods, I would make a note of it. I would check them out. I don't know if there's a time of year thing to it, but it's definitely something that is important. I can't begin to tell you why. I don't know if it's the sawdust itself, if it's the fact that all the trails came together here, or what it is, but if you have these in your area, if you're hunting a clear cut or timber that was clear cut and you find these, I highly suggest you take a look. Alright, so now that scouting trip's done, if I was to put a nice little bow on it for someone watching this who's a new hunter or looking to learn some new things, one is map scouting. Most of the places I went today, I had identified ahead of time on a map and basically wanted to verify. Number two is cover ground. You have to really eliminate ground when it comes to deer. It's kind of like in bass fishing, you know, or walleye fishing or anything like that. It's eliminating water, you know. A small percentage of the water holds a huge percentage of the fish. It's not that different with deer. Something you always have to keep in mind, though, is context, all right? And although a whitetail is a whitetail, they have very different habits depending on a lot of things. Hunting pressure is a big one. Location, habitat, all of those things play into it. And also, we're kind of talking about two different animals. Like, I'm mostly interested in mature bucks. If you're just out to shoot does and small bucks and things like that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it definitely is a lot simpler of a process than trying to kill that one buck who's a minority in the herd to begin with. And he got old by being smarter than the rest and wiser than the rest, and, you know, a little bit of luck. So you always have to keep in context of that. But some notes that apply anywhere is find the overlooked spots. You know, I've hunted this area before and I never checked that area out by the road, and I've never found that many beds in one area before, you know. So if I were to go into that area before, which I've done, and hunted it on a south wind, I blew my scent over those bedding areas that we just walked through and educated the deer there. Now, with that being said, I don't hunt any one specific area multiple times. Like, I might give a 70-acre parcel 2-3 shots unless I'm really on a big one and I think I keep getting in and out clean. But you know, so there's consequences to not knowing all the pieces to the puzzle, and I don't think you should be afraid to go in and hunt out of fear of blowing things out. But it's something to be mindful of. You know, I know the area better now, and I know that they're bedding there now. And so we go through the strategy of, well, how do I figure out when they're bedding there, what deer are bedding there, things like that. You really have two options, and option one is very difficult because most of the bucks don't show up in those thick areas until their antlers are hard. And that's observation. So by the time I can really observe that area, the season's mid-season, you know. And I like October. I think October is a great time to kill a buck. And then option two is trail cams. And I'm not a huge advocate of trail cams. I think they can get you into a lot of trouble too. But in that particular spot, I know of two locations that I can access from the road. I can park my truck and take a bike down the road if I need to, hop a ditch, and I can get into that area really quickly. If I go in with the right wind, or heavy wind especially for sound cover, or heavy rain for sound cover and everything else, I can put a trail cam up and then I can check it in the same circumstances and gather intel that way. So that'll probably be the route that I take. And if I don't find the intel that I'm looking for, it doesn't mean the spot's bad. It just depends on the time of year. So a spot can change. All right, it's important to keep notes of this stuff because whatever the conditions were that made that area that I just went through
a great bedding area, those conditions may not repeat next year, or they may only repeat at certain times of year. So maybe it's not an early season spot. Maybe it's after all the leaves drop. That's when you're going to want to go in there. As food sources change and as hunting pressure changes, things are always going to change. But I think it's a great idea to keep a journal and make notes of this kind of stuff and go from there. Now, today, I very much speed scouted, all right? What I'm probably going to do is go back with Nathan, and we're going to probably comb that area top to bottom really close. We're going to see every little bit of detail that we can find about it. And then we won't go back. Frankly, we'll just stay out of there. This is just day one of many. We'll scout all through the spring, all through the late winter, through the spring, into summer, unfortunately. But, and that intel is all really important. And then you hit the point where you just stay out of there, you know. I think a lot of new hunters or less experienced hunters, and I used to do it too, all of a sudden you start seeing the rub lines pop up, and maybe you get that buck on trail cam or you spot him out in the field feeding, and you have this sudden urge to do something, you know, to think, oh, okay, well, I need to run more trail cams and hang more stands and clear more shooting lanes and do this and do that. And all you do is booger it up, you know. It's like hunting bloodhounds. They smell you long after you've been there. If you're a new hunter and you're watching this and you go out and scout and you find a primo spot like that, stay out of it. You know, it's the easiest thing to do. Do nothing, you know. And but I think a lot of people have trouble with that. So if we were to put bullet points on it, scout a lot, early and often. Look for the overlooked places. Heavy clear cuts. A lot of hunters overlook that. Right by the road. A lot of hunters overlook that. So those are the things to kind of really focus on, believe it or not. And then cover a lot of ground at first. You know, eliminate ground. Find the spots that are, and just, you don't have to go back. And I still cover those spots every year for the most part. I usually do it in the name of shed hunting. But I check them out because you never know when something might get hot. Sometimes you know exactly why it'll never get hot. But yeah, so get out, do some scouting, get some exercise in, and try and be a better deer hunter. Thanks, guys. Don't forget to check us out on Instagram and Facebook, and hit that subscribe button.